Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Noah Freeman.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am the host who doesn't like toast, Mr. Brian E. Roach, and tonight is a Mr. Big Chest, Mr. Big Check, whatever his name is. Don't call me AB, call me Ronald Ocean, call me crazy. It's an AB-themed draft scenario podcast, and to sit here and help us enjoy all of the wondrous drama here at the Asian Spa, hopefully Robert Kraft won't interrupt us, is a couple of our SCU contributors. So first, always pleasure to have him on the podcast, Noah Freeman. Noah, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. It's good to be back on the podcast again.
And Ryan Lippert. Ryan, welcome aboard again.
Good to be back on once again.
And then I always save the best for last. The beauteous, the wondrous, the genius, the one that will make all of us men look stupid, Christina Rivers. Christina, how you doing?
I'm doing great, but I doubt I'll make any of you look silly on this topic.
Well, you never know. So I said this is an AB-themed podcast, and here's what I mean by that. We have certainly had our share of discussions about AB on podcasts past, but with the things that have come out this week, with the meeting that has occurred and the Steelers agreeing that they will attempt to shop Antonio Brown around, with the interview that Kevin Colbert did today saying at least 3 teams have called with some interest, we thought it would be nice to roundtable this a little bit and try and mix this up with sort of a mock draft. So our goal here is, first of all, try and figure out where we stand now. What is AB actually worth? Joe and I talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, but what do we all think the Steelers are really likely to get out of a trade for AB? And then where? In other words, if we're going to get something, where is he going to end up? Where do we want him to end up? Where don't we want him to end up? And then once we have that all sorted out amongst the 4 of us, what are we going to get out of it? If we get players or if we get draft picks, where are the Steelers going to spend that new draft capital? So that's our scenario for this particular podcast. And to start this out, I want to let's see if we can all chime in on value. As you know, Antonio, Mr. Big Chest Brown, has gone crazy. He's gone Looney Tunes, and I don't know whether the meeting with originally I thought the meeting with Art Rooney II and conversations as such, and the nice little picture in the most frightening tracksuit ever seen that he posted on Instagram would maybe start to calm things down. Then the Mr. Big Chest, Mr. Guaranteed Bucks, it's all about the money, Jerry Maguire, show me the money. Later in the day, I don't know. Now, at least he's been quiet since then, and maybe somebody told him to. But are we in a situation now where his value has started to stabilize? Certainly he may have done some damage to it, but where do we think he's going to be? So to answer that first, let's start off with Ryan. Ryan, in your mind, what can the Steelers legitimately expect a team to give up for AB?
No, there are some teams in the first round with multiple picks. Like you have the Raiders or possibly like the Packers that could give us a late first round pick. But realistically, I think what we're looking at here is probably a second round pick if we looked at draft capital. I'm not going to go any lower than a second if I'm the Steelers. I think that's disrespectful to go just third round unless a player from another team's involved. But right now, I think our best shot is probably a second round and maybe like a later round pick along with it.
You said disrespectful. I need clarification. Disrespectful to whom?
The type of player that AB's been for the Steelers, the type of value he's brought to the table.
I see. So, Mr. It's all about respect. Then goes out and damages his draft value by acting like a tantrum-filled 3-year-old. If we can't get a second-round pick for him, it's disrespectful. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. So you think top end right now in your mind is a second-round pick?
Yes, talent-wise, yes. If we're looking at his value.
All right, Noah. What do you take? What's your take on this?
It's hard to say just because this year for this particular situation has kind of been it's been a little crazy because first, if you look at his situation, putting aside all of the drama, and you put away how productive he's been. He's also got almost no guaranteed money left on his contract, so the contract situation and all of the money for opposing teams is actually really good for the Steelers because it's not like he's going to be owed a lot of money as soon as he goes to another team. But then you've got somewhere the middle of this year, and I've got 2 words, just Amari Cooper. And I think he just set the bar this season when the Raiders got a first round for him. And if you just go with that precedent, then Brown is worth 3 to 4 first round picks. But obviously that's not going to happen. So all you need, I think, is 2 teams that want him and want him bad. And you can try and squeeze things out of them. So you just get those 2 teams. You tell one or the other, well, you can just this team, we've got someone else that wants to give a little more. So don't you think you want to up it up? Just add some stuff, sweeten the pot, that kind of stuff. Is there anything else you got? See if that price can drive up. Also, not to mention that when the combine starts, that's a place, first of all, that everyone's talked about where the actual trade rumors and stuff might start to boil up. But everyone's at the combine, maybe everyone in the same place. Things start to buzz, and I at least want to believe that they will get a first rounder. I think I might lean more towards Ryan, where I think realistically it might be a day 2 pick, but I'm going to say first rounder just because I want to get something out of everything that he's done, at least on the field, and then maybe a little bit of the off the field things as of recent.
Gotcha. Okay. Tina, I'm going to have you chime in before I give my opinion on this, and then I've got a follow-up. So where do you stand with what you think the Steelers can get for Antonio Brown?
Well, we all know the Steelers want absolutely, on a business standpoint, they want what they can get. A first-round pick would be probably the most ideal situation for the Steelers organization. Based on what Brown has produced as a player, he's definitely first-round value. Realistically, I think, the other day I was talking to Jason Shetler, who's also a Pittsburgh beat writer, and I told him 2 second-round picks. I don't see them taking just a single pick, and I don't think that's unfair to Brown, and I don't think it's unfair to the Steelers organization for them to be expecting that they would get 2 picks. Whether or not they get 2 second-round picks, I don't know, but the second round is where I've been kind of hovering, and that's kind of through the grapevine. That's kind of the consensus. All the draft Twitter and so-called experts. So, I mean, I think everything that the guys have said so far is completely legitimate, and Amari Cooper is a great example.
Gotcha. Yeah, and look, I've been saying this throughout the process. I am perfectly content taking a second-round pick, provided it's not the only thing in the package. In my view, even as people are going to start to get hepped up, even as people are going to start to get even more draft crazy as the combine approaches, and people start to see all these measurables that may or may not translate to anything on the football field. Dree Archer, cough, cough. They're going to see all this stuff, and everybody's going to get all hyped, right? I still don't think this draft class is as good as it will be next year. So to me, I still want. I think they have to get something for this year's draft, but I want capital that expands us beyond just this year and gives us something next year as well. So I'm quite content to take a second-round pick this year if you're going to give me either a first-rounder the following year or a second-rounder and something else, or a player. If you throw a player into the mix, that may alter it somewhat depending on who the player is. So I don't disagree with what anybody has said. Clearly, AB as a player, from the standpoint of his work ethic, from the standpoint of his on-the-field prowess, is a multiple. I mean, he's a generational type receiver, and how do you really put a value on that? But unfortunately, you have to take into account all the other things, and the Mr. Big Chest and the Facebook Live and the stuff going off the balcony and everything else that goes along with, I can't remember now. I'm going to lose track of it. It's ADW. I don't remember what it was. We're trying to come up with a new hashtag, another diva wide receiver, another wacky wide receiver diva. I don't remember. Joe came up with it the other day, and now I've forgotten it, so I'm blowing it. But all the diva stuff that goes along with him, and that makes that trade value a little more difficult to deal with. Now, the follow-up question to this, though, is that Colbert was very adamant that unless the deal benefits the Steelers, they're not going to do it. So with that being said, is a second-round pick going to be enough of a benefit for the Pittsburgh Steelers to pull the trigger on this trade? And we'll start. Ryan, what do you think?
Not like you said, just one by itself. I don't think we'd have to have a player or multiple second-round picks, maybe a second and a third, but not just one by itself for me.
All right, Tina.
Why don't you let Noah and Ryan talk first? Because I have something I want to throw in just as a wrench in this little thing.
Okay, I like wrenches. All right, Noah, what do you think?
I really like Tina's scenario with like a second round maybe this year, second round later. You get something now, you also get something later. Who knows where, whatever team you trade for, maybe that second round is a high pick next year. You never know.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Miss Monkey Wrench.
Okay, well, the hashtag you were looking for was yet another wide receiver diva.
Thank you.
So figure that out. You're welcome. I guess I'm the memory bank for our back channel chats. Now here's my wrench. Okay, so we're talking about Antonio Brown's social media and dissatisfaction and those types of things. I want to jump back because, hey, I'll admit it, I'm one of the old members of our group. And I'm thinking about when Emmanuel Sanders and Mike Wallace weren't happy in Pittsburgh and they were shopping them. What did they get for them?
For Mike Wallace, not a darn thing. I don't think they got anything for Emmanuel Sanders either. Didn't they? I mean, other than maybe compensatory picks, didn't they all leave in free agency?
Well, see, I believe so. And so to throw a wrench, AB's not a free agent, so of course, they let them go, and there was talk that maybe somebody would bring Emmanuel Sanders back to Pittsburgh. I don't think that's going to happen. But then again, how much has Antonio Brown hurt his stock? If he's hurt it bad enough, and there are rumors out there that, there was a team that was courting him that has withdrawn. Now, whether or not that's just rumor, speculation on social media, who's to say at this point? But if he's hurt his stock, then realistically, I could see them, the Steelers, being them. I could see them maybe saying, okay, we've told him kind of, if you want to be traded, you need to kind of knock this stuff off. Because Colbert kind of inferred in his most recent press conference interview situation that he he kind of needed to be. If you want to get traded, you kind of need to work with us here because Rosenhaus and AB can't talk to teams right now. So it's really up to the Steelers to start kind of wheeling and dealing in the back rooms and find a place for him. And so that question then leads to, if he hurt his stock, would he then cause them to possibly get a second round pick and then, as was mentioned before, a later round pick either in this draft, or would they possibly be able to grab a second or third or fourth just in the top tier for next year? So that'd be 2020.
I think it's very realistic. To me, you cannot let Antonio Brown go without getting at least something remotely resembling value. You've got the talking heads on the networks talking, they may be lucky to get a third rounder. I think that's crazy talk. And, I think certain teams will be willing to deal future picks in combination with this year picks. But, it may end up being, which will lead us to the next question that we had. It may end up being that the capital that they can expect to get, because I don't remember who said it. It might have been Noah, it might have been Ryan, it might have been Tina, it might have been me. It might have been all of us. One of us at least said we need multiple teams to jump in. And I agree with that completely. It needs to be a marketplace, not just, well, there's 3 people who were tentatively interested. You need to have multiple teams that are definitively interested to try and pump up the value, so that guys like Colbert can play one team off of another and try and get them to give a little bit more so they can get the best offer that is feasible. It still leads us to the next question, which is, where is he going to end up? And one of the things that I found interesting in KC's press conference is he did not rule out anybody. While he did say they wouldn't like to trade him to, in division or in the AFC or a team that's a rival, if that's who gives them the best value and is the best benefit for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have to consider that. And while I think he has to say that, I still, in my mind, I don't believe he's going to any team in the AFC North. I don't believe he's going to the Patriots. And if they have their druthers, I think he's going into the NFC. But let's look at that aspect of this. In my mind, I'm going to start it off. In my mind, you've got, and I think, Ryan, you mentioned this, you've got teams like Oakland and Green Bay who both have multiple first-round picks. Oakland, we've talked about repeatedly in this process as a team that maybe will do it. And if Mike Mayock was not there, I think that they would find a way to fleece them and get picks, because I think Chucky is insane. So, but now they've got a draft guru there, and I don't know that he's going to be willing to give up the capital that he currently has for Antonio Brown. The Packers is another interesting option, and while I don't think they will give up their early pick, which I think might be 12th or 13th, something like that, they might give up the 27th. And so I see those two guys as still real strong possibilities for where he could end up. And, there certainly are other options. I still think Seattle and Carolina are both possibilities. Carolina simply because, Antonio Brown it's assumed he has a really good relationship with Cam Newton, and the Steelers have a really good relationship with the Carolina Panthers. And that may be actually a reason not to trade him there, because maybe they don't want to sour that relationship. But we'll have to wait and see. I like the idea of him being out in Seattle. At least I did until I saw a report today that Russell Wilson wants to be traded to the Giants. I don't know whether that's fluff or nonsense, but so I think that there certainly are teams that are out there available and could be players to force the value up some, but we'll have to wait and see. So, Noah, why don't you take it from here? Where can you imagine him actually ending up?
I'm going to give. Well, first, I at least think, not definitely, but I think it's definite. They're going to at least prefer that Brown would get shipped over to the NFC. And you also look at recent history when you've got AFC teams trading, or at least some of the top end AFC teams trading. You even have Vance coming over from the 49ers. You've got the Pats making a lot of their trades to the NFC with Garoppolo and a bunch of players, and Pittsburgh, of course, would just prefer it. So, and plus, there are also a number of NFC teams that are in win now mode, because there's a lot of great teams at the top of the NFC, and it's just a real battle to try and get to the top and get to the Super Bowl over there. So you mentioned actually two of the teams that I could see Brown going over to, and I'm going to at least preface this more of these two teams will not necessarily care about. So we talked a lot about how the Raiders have a lot of draft picks. They wouldn't lose all of that. These teams that I have, they would lose kind of some of their at least draft capital now in more of that win mode now scenario. So the team I'm going to go with, and I'm going to put away, I'm going to say the Russell Wilson thing is going to be fluff and not necessarily true, at least as of the time of us recording this podcast. But I'm going to go with the Seahawks. If I were to go with my first round pick as more of a dream scenario, then they would get a later pick. So it's obviously not as much capital in terms of the Seahawks, so they're not giving up too much. If they were to give up a first-round pick, it'd be a lot later, say, compared to the Raiders or the 49ers. They also have some decent receivers that they could potentially unload to help Ben and Juju, at least give some more receiver depth before the draft potentially, where you could also get Doug Baldwin or Tyler Lockett if they wanted to shop one of those picks in trade or something or another. And for the Seahawks, I think that it makes a lot of sense, because if Russell Wilson, again, saying that this is fluff, he really hasn't had an explosive player, an explosive playmaker to battle at the top of the NFC quite yet. Of course, he's had a lot of big guys, like you've got Doug Baldwin, but no one's the caliber that Brown is. So really that would just help propel the Seahawks to try and go up against the Rams, since the Rams are literally in win now mode before they have to pay everyone. The Saints are going to be back again. And the draft capital would be there to acquire him. The Steelers would certainly never see him, basically. So I think that's one of the potentially the better trades that could be out there. Especially when the Seahawks have also had some divas in their locker room as well, so they know how to at least they're at least used to it. But the other team you talked about was the Panthers. Cam Newton isn't getting any younger. He has basically never had a playmaker quite like Brown. They found their running back in McCaffrey. I wouldn't necessarily mind it. I'll give two AFC teams that I could see. I could see the Jets just because they have capital. The Raiders, of course, the same thing, draft capital and financial. I know a lot of people have talked about the Colts. I went to school in Indiana for the last 4 years. I've heard a lot of stuff around there that they just don't want the diva. So I don't see the Colts, but those are my potential scenarios that I thought about, at least when we were talking about this.
Cool. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Ryan.
All right, so a big team I see, even though, like you said, Brian, Mayock is a draft genius. He may be lenient to kind of give away those draft picks. But I think the Raiders have a good shot at least attempting to trade one of those first-round picks for him, because their offense, let's face it, they need some star power. Derek Carr, he's not getting the job done. He could use a star player, star receiver like AB to come in and kind of be their go-to guy, face of the offense. So they'd be willing to give up one of those later first rounds, I think. And another team I kind of look at in the NFC is the San Francisco 49ers. I've seen a lot of talk about them possibly packaging Marquise Goodwin and a second or third round pick. I wouldn't be mad at that. It gives us another receiver to pair with Juju, and it gives us some draft capital, so that wouldn't be a bad fit either. Obviously, the Packers, they have the pick 27. That could be useful as well. It'll give them another weapon for Rodgers, which I think would be dangerous with them too. But I think that's a lot less likely than the Raiders and 49ers at this point.
All right. Tina, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, my thought about the Packers is that if Antonio Brown, and yes, I'm still going to call him that because that's his name, not Mr. Big Chest or Ronald Ocean, if he goes to the Packers, one of his concerns was that Ben Roethlisberger had too much control of the team. Anybody that knows the Packers knows that the team runs through Aaron Rodgers. So as much as I'd love to see him go to Green Bay, I don't know if he will because, well, I mean, he could, but how long will he last there if Rodgers controls the offense? So there's my little devil's advocate. I always like to throw in these devil's advocates because you guys all sound so convinced, whereas I'm not convinced that he's necessarily going one place or another. As far as Seattle, I think that would be a decent fit for him. Not only a decent fit, but I think that it would give the Steelers an opportunity, like was said previously, not to have to face him as often. He'd be, West Coast. They can deal with their West Coast issues, and the Steelers can kind of move on and prepare for other things. As far as the Panthers, I really don't have a sense on that one. Ultimately, I'd love to see him go to the Jets. That may be a little vindictive on my part, but it's just because I really want him. I want to see what he can do with a team that's kind of at the bottom and see if he can make them better.
I ain't mad at
that.
Is that
a selfish? I don't know if that's selfish or not, but I kind of like to see, put your money where your mouth is and show us what you can do. Show us if you can be successful and make another team as successful as the Steelers have been.
Yeah,
because that would be Cinderella story there, right?
Sure. I kind of like the idea of both Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown ending up on the Jets. Just and somebody tweeted this, so this is not an original thought. I don't know who tweeted it, so I can't give them credit. But just so that the Patriots have a little more difficult time in some of their games. And I'd rather it be the Jets than the Dolphins because they always lose to the Dolphins once in Miami. And if they flub it, oh well. Who really expected it? I'm not mad at that idea. Ryan, you had, when we were talking in the back rooms in the chat sessions, Ryan, you had heard something that I thought was interesting. I said, let's bring it up on the podcast. So I want you to go ahead and expand on that rumor that was put forth.
So basically, a buddy of mine, we were talking in a group chat earlier about the whole AB situation. He said he heard on Pardon the Interruption today with Michael Wilbon. He said Wilbon said there's a rumor going around that the Cardinals were offering us Rosen plus a late round pick, or I think it was a mid round pick for Antonio Brown.
And my thought on that, and I agree with this. I mean, I wanted to bring this up because of the variety of complexities that could occur with something like this. Because in theory, at least I can't remember a situation similar to this one. I cannot remember a situation where a team had one of the top three players at a position and was trying to move him in his essentially, if not prime, late prime. I just can't remember a scenario like this. And so it brings up craziness. First of all, I would never make that deal straight up because I don't want Rosen. And I know, Noah, you said he's a diva, and why would you trade a diva for a diva? I just don't really want him because they already drafted a quarterback, and whether or not he's the future of the franchise, I don't know. But I don't know that he's not, so I don't want another one to monkey in the waters. But what if it was a part of a three-way package where some quarterback desperate team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, perhaps, even though they may or may not say they're quarterback desperate, I think they are, really likes Rosen and says, wow, he's going to be available, and this is how he's going to be available. We'll give you our first-round pick because we don't like any of the quarterbacks in this draft. They're not nearly as good as the top 4 from last year, even if we didn't see all the spectacularness that we expected. We'll make that deal with you and take him off your hands. In that kind of a scenario, I wouldn't really be mad at that. If they can get a mid-round pick from the Cardinals, get Rosen, trade Rosen to another team for a first-round pick, I'm all on board with that kind of nonsense. Do you think that's feasible? And Ryan, you brought it up, so I'll start with you.
I think it is. I even looked at a team like the Miami Dolphins in the first round. They're quarterback hungry right now, so maybe they throw us their first round pick because, maybe a guy like Haskins or Kyler Murray won't be available at that pick, so they won't need it anyways.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Noah?
I like it. First, I want to briefly go back to your point about you can't remember the last time a position was wanting to be traded, and I'd have to echo that more because you even look at I'm going to jump leagues for a second, but you look at the NBA right now with Anthony Davis wanting to get traded, and everyone's talking about how they can't remember the last time someone as good as Anthony Davis wants to be traded, and no one knows what's going to happen because it hasn't happened before. So echoing what Tina said, since this is such a unique situation, I think all of us have no idea what's going to happen. But to your point with the three-way trade, again, just going to echo what you and then what Ryan said. I'd like it. First of all, I mean, we'd see the Jaguars, but I don't think Rosen's really going to be able to kill the Steelers very much, at least in the next few years. You'd give it over to the Cardinals, who are their organizational acquisitions, trying to be nice here. Some of the decisions that the Cardinals the Cardinals organization have made some iffy decisions, I guess, in recent past. So moving him over there would be quite nice, I guess. Again, echoing what Tina says, going to the Jets, maybe it's the scenario onto the NFC.
Yep. Tina, what do you think of a multi-team, multiplayer, multi-pick blockbuster extravaganza?
Okay, now I'm sorry I laughed, but it's kind of funny. I have this hatred in my heart for the Arizona Cardinals, and it's not and funny enough, my high school mascot was the Cardinals, and I don't know how they got away with it, but for years it's the exact same logo and everything. I'm surprised they haven't been sued. So you'd think I'd be like, oh yes, go Cardinals. But their whole Steelers West thing over the years has just driven me nuts because they will take a decent player who maybe doesn't fit in the Steelers scheme or needs to be moved or whatever. They'll take them, and it's almost like the Steelers graveyard. They send them to Arizona and they retire, kind of thing. And so, again, maybe this is not nice of me, and that, hey, you're like sitting here bashing Antonio Brown and you think that he doesn't have any worth. That's far from the case. I don't like the antics, but as far as the player, there's no doubt that he's one of the very best players in the NFL. But a three-way deal isn't a bad thing. AB would definitely fit in Arizona. I don't think Larry Fitzgerald is going to be playing much longer. And the Cardinals will definitely need a much higher caliber wide receiver than they currently have on their roster. And as far as using Rosen as some kind of other trade, I don't know, like trade bait, I guess that's not really a very nice thing to say. I was thinking, even the Buccaneers, how many times does I can't say his name, Winston, how long are they going to deal with Winston being suspended and then count on Ryan Fitzpatrick magic I don't know. So to me, the Bucks might be a place that they could ship Rosen. I don't know. That one's a harder question for me.
Well, but that's actually
But
you
as
bring
far
up
as
a good
I'm
point
not
there.
opposed. I'm not opposed to the whole, 3-team package deal where they shift some people around. I think that if it makes sense business wise, I think that they wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, no, I think whatever's going to get them, and because I believe Colbert very strongly, I think whatever's going to get them the best value from an organization, they're going to try and do. I think as we try and now enter the what are we going to do with all our goodies, and it doesn't look like any of us think we're going to be Charlie Brown on Halloween and get a rock for Antonio Brown. I got a rock. We're going to get something. And even though we all sort of thought maybe a second rounder is the top, we projected some options where it might actually be a first rounder when we're talking about where he could land. It is the one thing I will give credit for the talking heads and the analysts saying is it just takes one team to be stupid. Which is true. It just takes one team to be stupid, and all of a sudden they got way more than we ever thought. It also means somebody has to be stupid, and it doesn't mean that anybody will. But what I'm gonna take out of this are two scenarios for us to assume when we look at how's this going to help the Steelers in the upcoming draft. One is they end up with 2 first-rounders. The other is they only end up with their single first rounder, but now they have multiple second rounders. And since we can't really project into 2020 where they're going to draft or who they're going to draft or what their needs may be, let's stick with just 19. And we'll start with the lower case first, which will be if they end up with no first rounder for Antonio Brown in 2019, but they get a second rounder. And I'll throw it out 2 different ways. Let's say that it's a top 10 pick in the second round as one option, or it's a second 10 pick in the second round as the second option. What are they going to be able to get out of that, in your opinion? And we'll start with Ryan. What if that's the capital that they've gotten? How do you think they're going to be able to spend that? And we're laughing because Ryan had his mic muted. I will have edited that part out. But if they get a second rounder in the scenarios that I played out, how do you think they spend that capital?
I think I kind of like if we get a linebacker to fall like Devin White. Miracle happens. Don't think it'll happen, but miracle scenario. I'd like Devin White in our first round pick. If we get him in the first, I'd like a corner early in the second, like a Lonnie Johnson out of Kentucky. I know I'm a homer. I'm from Kentucky. But he's a guy that they're talking about late first, early second. So that could be a huge deal for us there to get him early in the second. He could come in and possibly start as a rookie there.
Okay. And that's I don't disagree with that concept. Noah, what do you think?
I'm not going to give necessarily anyone specific, but I wasn't thinking of anyone specific just because I don't think the Steelers are – first, I don't think the Steelers are necessarily going to go out of their draft patterns per se, so I don't think they're going to do anything crazy different to where they might be jumping around trying to get some like a running back or just some random scenario. I think they're still going to stick with the needs that they have. We've talked about a lot of those on recent draft podcasts. So whatever those be, however it falls, a lot of your defensive players. Of course, we've talked about getting receiver regardless of if Antonio Brown would be on the team or not. So I don't think they necessarily shy away from that. I think they just go best position available / position of need. So say they draft a cornerback first, the linebackers next, or vice versa, or however you want to deal it out.
Okay. Tina, your thoughts on this lovely second round scenario?
I think Ryan is from Indiana. Is that correct?
Kentucky. Close enough.
Oh, and it's Noah that's from Indiana.
Yeah, I just went to school there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm thinking my Midwest brain is kind of going along with what you had to say. I really don't see the Steelers breaking what their overall draft plan is. And regardless of what they get in return, I think that'll just be an extra incentive to maybe look at some people that they thought wouldn't be there. But I don't think they're going to roll the dice and try to make a big splash and change the whole pattern of the draft. I think they'll just stick with what their plan is, and if they get the extra pick, use it to fill the holes that they need filled.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I'm
not going to say they're going to definitely, I know this would make you unhappy, but for example, I'm not going to say that they're going to go after Greedy because that may not even have been on their big board to begin with.
I'm sorry, I'm vomiting. Vomiting because I don't want anything to do with Greedy. But and he's never going to be there in the second round, so I'm okay with that. If he was there in the second round, I might not throw up if they picked him, but he's not going to be. All right, let me tell you what I think. If they go in the second round, and I'm going to be moderately specific, I think if they only have one first-round pick, they need a defensive playmaker, and it'll be whoever they think is that guy that they're going to pick in the first round. And I'm not worried about who that is yet, but if that's the case, I mean, it could be one of the linebackers. It could be Byron Murphy, the corner. It could be, and probably in all realisticness, will be somebody none of us are thinking of. But, it needs to be a defensive playmaker if that's the only chance they've got in the first round. But, if they get a mid to high-level second-round pick and Antonio Brown is gone, then I think that they need to spend that on a wide receiver. And then the second pick in that round, go back to the defense. That also fits the pattern of what they've been doing the last few years. Juju, James Washington, and I'm going to throw out, even though I don't know that he makes it to the second round, and I'm all about the two guys from Ole Miss right now. Everybody knows it. I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. There's no way DK Metcalf is there in the second round, but A.J. Brown might be. And especially if it's a high second round pick, and I think that's a guy that would be in my wheelhouse and make me happy. It would also make Zach Adonia happy if they went that direction. So, I kind of agree with all of you. Look, the Steelers are going to do what they want to do. They're not going to none of this is going to make them alter the way that they do business. Their board is going to be their board, and wherever they end up drafting, they're going to take the player they think gives them the best value at that spot in the draft. And value doesn't mean the best player available. It means the best fit for them, taking into account their needs, and so on and so forth. Because, if they're picking, let's say, at 20 and Dwayne Haskins is there, maybe he's the best player in the draft, but it doesn't make any sense for them to take a quarterback. So it's not the best value. And I think they're going to do that regardless. Okay. The second scenario is they get 2 first-rounders. Now they've got 2 first-rounders. And I know, boy, through all of the mock draft podcasts that we've done, people have given us great commentary, great feedback, a lot of discussion, and we all really appreciate it. But, man, do we think our guys are worth more than what they're going to be worth. We've got people thinking we're going to get the first pick in the draft. San Francisco's going to give up, whatever theirs is. They're going to get the second. They're going to get the fourth. They're not going to get a top 10 pick. It's just almost beyond belief that they're going to get a top 10 pick. It is maybe conceivable that they're going to get a pick in between 10 and 20. I think it's more likely they get a pick below the one they already have. So to be moderate, that's my assumption here when we're saying that they're going to get 2 first-round picks. They're going to have 20 and something else in between 20 and 32, probably in the 24, 25, 26, 27 range. So if that's the case, and I'm just going to stick with my own guns here for the moment, at 20, I'm taking DK Metcalf. I've said it, and I'm going to keep saying it. Metcalf or bust. I think you've got a guy that Ben would fall in love with there. He's got the height. He's got the size. He's fast. If he runs too fast, there's no shot he's going to be there. But, last year a wide receiver didn't go till past 20, so you never know. And if that's the case and they have 2 first-round picks, I'm spending one on him if he's there, and then I'm going to the defense, and I'm sticking with defensive playmakers, be that a linebacker, be that a cornerback. Whoever's still around it, whatever the pick is, I'm going in that direction. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And Tina, what do you think?
Ooh, I'm torn because even though I know they need wide receiver, I almost, fingers crossed, wish they would address defense if in that scenario. Back-to-back defense. That'll probably draw some ire from listeners, but I really see that being a bigger issue at this point. So, I don't know necessarily whether I would put linebacker above corner, but I'd have to say go back-to-back defense.
Okay.
You can quote me. You can quote me later and tell me how wrong I am.
I would never tell you you're wrong. I may tell you that it just didn't work out the way you thought it would. Ryan.
Well, I'm with you, Ryan. If DK Metcalf's there, you take him. No doubt about it. But do I think he's going to be there? Absolutely not. So if he's not there by some miracle, I'm with Tina here. I go defense, and if Devin White's there, I'd take him. A dream scenario for our defense, I think, would be Devin White and then Byron Murphy still on the board when we go our second first-round pick. That would be a perfect scenario for us. Both of them are starters as rookies. And then we could take a wide receiver in the second round.
I would agree with you. That's a dream scenario, but it would be a great scenario, and I would be happy with it. But I don't think either one of those guys is going to slide down beyond 20. One of them may be there. That's a possibility. But I don't hate what you're thinking. Noah.
I like both scenarios because first, if you have when you think about the draft and you think about receivers as of recent have never been drafted very high. So when you can get a guy like Metcalf coming, not necessarily he's not dropping, but if you have a receiver that's that good, usually if you think about the best quarterback getting drafted, he's usually going to get drafted a lot higher compared to the best receiver. So if you can get a guy like him coming in, that'd be a steal at least as of that point. But I can also see the other way, getting your 2 defensive players just to try and get those needs. The Steelers have not had to draft really high for a lot of the receivers that they've had as of recent. Because, of course, we're talking about Brown, who's been in the 6th round, but you've got Juju, the next number 1 option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2nd round guy, so I don't think you necessarily need to get the receiver in the 1st round. Again, if someone like Metcalf drops, I think you'd be able to take it. If the board is falling your way, maybe you can still get your defensive players that you need. But I can see both scenarios. I wouldn't mind either scenario regardless.
All right, I'm going to steal Tina's role, and I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this. We've got 20 and 27 because we traded him to Green Bay for the 27th pick. We got an extra 2nd rounder out of it in 2020. Great, Yahoo. We're ecstatic. And for whatever reason, I'm trying to think who's going 3rd. Well, who's got 2nd pick? Is that San Francisco? 49ers have 2nd pick in the draft, yes?
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's right. Okay. So, Lynch is a guy who is not afraid to deal and pick up if he can pick up picks. So we've got 20 and 27, and what if he decides he doesn't really want either Nick Bosa or Josh Allen because the defensive lineman goes first to Arizona. And he calls us up and he says, give us 20 and 27 plus a second rounder next year, which we got from, the trade with Green Bay. And we'll give you number 2. Now we've gone up to number 2. And the first part of this monkey wrench question is, do you make the deal? And the second part is, then what do you do with it? So, Ryan.
So first, you said both first rounds and a second for number 2?
The 2022nd.
Yes, okay. I don't know if I'd do that deal, honestly. I mean, the 2 top players are edge rushers. Obviously, if we made the deal, I'd be all in on Josh Allen. I think he's the second best player in the draft. Could be eventually the top player out of this draft. But I don't know if we need him right now. We got TJ Watt, and Colbert kind of act like he's going to give Bud one more year. So I don't know if we need that this year. Why not take the 2 first rounders and the other pick and use them to our advantage, get multiple players in this year's draft?
All right, Noah.
I'm torn, at least as of this new scenario right away. So basically, what the Steelers would be giving up is Brown and their 2019 first round draft pick to move up to the second pick overall.
Yes.
Because they'd be giving it away. So basically you're giving up Brown and your first round pick for the number 2 overall pick. And I think it'd just be, how crazy are some of these teams for Murray or Haskins, basically, I think. And how much are they willing to give up? Because I agree with Ryan. I don't think you need any. I think most of us will agree, at least at number 2, there's not going to be a player that you necessarily need there. Maybe even at 4 or 5 or 6, you could take someone that you might not need, but you could still definitely use. So how desperate are a lot of these other teams to try and scoot up? How much other draft capital could you get to move down? Is that something you'd be willing to risk to move down? Because say it happens during the NFL draft. So I think it'd just be, and if there's anyone that I'd want running that kind of show, it's definitely Colbert, because I know a lot of Pittsburgh fans have been upset with drafts, and I've been on this show talking about just actually how good the Steelers draft picks have been. So if there's anyone that I'd be wanting to run that kind of blow up scenario, kind of weird thing, it would definitely be Colbert, and it definitely make for a very interesting either draft night or leading up to the draft night to see how everything unfolded.
Absolutely. And I'm going to yell at you in a second, but I'll tell you why. Tina?
I don't think I would take the deal. I just, I know I'm just oppositional tonight, but it doesn't make sense to me to do it. The Steelers, I mean, last year's draft was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in the first round. All the teams that were moving all over, they get up there and announce that it was somebody's pick, and the next thing you know, somebody else was moving, and it was just insane. And the Steelers, I agree that Colbert would be the guy that I'd want to run that show, but it just seems like such a nightmare scenario. And potentially kind of a disaster if the person that you thought you might want a little later ends up going to somebody that, like, heaven forbid, an AFC North team, because you took the risk. I don't know. I guess I'd be more conservative and say no to that deal.
Yeah, and this is why I'm going to yell at Noah, because he stole my thunder. So damn you, Noah. The only way I take that deal, because I think it's crazy and you're giving up too much to begin with, is if you've got a secondary deal already in your pocket, because, as Noah said, some crazy team thinks that the guy at number 3 is going to take Dwayne Haskins or one of the other quarterbacks, and that's who they desperately want, and they're willing to give you a first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, and a first rounder the year after, or something completely wackadoodle that's going to set you up for multiple years in a row. I don't do that deal. I'd stay and keep my 2 first rounders. But you never know what's going to happen. I had to throw an insanity scenario in there at some point. I think, we've all said this at multiple points in this podcast. We don't know what the hell they're going to do. We don't know where the hell Antonio Brown is going to go. It could be a 50-50 split as to whether he's still in Pittsburgh and just causes more drama for us all. in 2019. I think that they will legitimately try and get rid of him, and it will all depend on whether there is a market for him, and we're going to find that out in the next month or so. And I think as the combine approaches and all the teams are converging, we may know something interesting in the days of the combine or in the days following it. So I think this was a fun conversation. I appreciate you guys taking the time tonight to jump on. Noah, tell everybody how they can follow you out there in the Twitterverse.
Noah_Freeman12. That's it.
All right, Ryan.
You can follow me on Twitter, Lippert42. Also on Blitzalytics. You can check us out at our website.
Excellent. And Miss Tina Rivers, most knowledgeable of us all.
Who has a very fortunate last name. You can find me on Twitter at 3 Rivers_writer. Excellent.
And I'm Cannons Don't Thun, and we've had that conversation. So I appreciate it again. We will do it again. I promise the next time around it will be more of a true mock draft than this time around. But, there's only so many times we can all tell you that we'd pick the same damn guys. So, until next time, folks, my name's Brian. His name's Ryan. His other name's Noah, and her name is Tina. It's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.